Captain Jake Morrison had always prided himself on being spectacularly average at getting captured. Not the best, mind you, but certainly not the worst either. As he sat strapped to what could only be described as a dentist chair designed by someone who had never actually seen teeth, he took a moment to appreciate the irony of his situation. "Human," came a voice that sounded like gravel being processed through a synthesizer. "You will cooperate with our procedures." Jake looked up at his captor, a 7-foot-tall specimen of alien engineering that resembled what would happen if a praying mantis had a baby with a particularly aggressive filing cabinet. The creature's name tag, because apparently even advanced alien civilizations believed in workplace identification, read Commander Vex. "Oh, absolutely," Jake replied, his voice dripping with the kind of sarcasm that could strip paint. "I live for invasive alien procedures. It's like Christmas morning, except instead of presents I get probed by oversized insects." Vex's compound eyes twitched, which Jake assumed was either annoyance or the alien equivalent of a sneeze. "Your cooperation is not required for what comes next, human. Our telepathic specialist will extract the information we need directly from your primitive mind." Enter stage left, Xian Cree, who looked like someone had crossed a jellyfish with a philosophy professor. Cree floated rather than walked, which Jake found personally offensive. If you were going to interrogate someone, the least you could do was have the courtesy to use legs like a civilized being. "Commander Vex," Cree's voice rippled through the air like disturbed water. "This human's mental defenses appear to be minimal. This should be a simple extraction." Jake couldn't help but grin. "Oh, you're going to read my mind? That's fantastic. I should warn you, though, there's a lot of weird stuff up there. Like seriously weird. I once spent 3 hours thinking about whether hot dogs are sandwiches." "Silence," Vex commanded, though Jake noticed a slight tremor in his voice. "Begin the procedure, Cree." The ship around them hummed with the kind of efficiency that suggested its builders had never heard of the concept of good enough. Everything was sleek, chrome, and probably required a manual thicker than most human religious texts. Jake found it deeply unsettling how clean everything was. "I must say," Jake continued, because apparently imminent mental violation made him chatty, "your ship is remarkably tidy. Do you guys have a cleaning service, or is this more of a, we're so advanced we don't produce waste situation? Because I've got to tell you, that would really mess with my worldview." Cree's tentacles began to glow with an otherworldly light. "Your mental chatter will cease to be relevant momentarily, human. Prepare yourself for the superior intellect of the Zephyrian Empire." Jake leaned back in his chair as much as the restraints would allow. "Superior intellect, huh? Well, this should be interesting. Fair warning, though, my brain comes with a lot of disclaimers. Side effects may include existential dread, an inexplicable knowledge of reality TV drama, and the sudden urge to argue about pineapple on pizza." Cree's tentacles pressed against Jake's temples with the delicacy of a surgeon and the confidence of someone who had clearly never encountered a human mind before. The alien's bioluminescent patterns pulsed in what Jake assumed was either deep concentration or the equivalent of loading screen. "Initiating neural interface," Cree announced, sounding like a GPS system designed by people who took themselves far too seriously. "Human, your resistance is futile. Your species' mental capacity is well documented." Jake felt a strange tingling sensation, like someone was rummaging through his thoughts with cold, slightly damp fingers. "Oh, that's unpleasant. It's like having someone else use your computer without asking." "Very rude, really." "Silence," Vex commanded from his position near what appeared to be a control panel designed by someone who believed more blinking lights equaled more intelligence. "What are you finding, Cree?" There was a pause. A long pause. The kind of pause that suggested Cree was encountering something unexpected, like opening what you thought was a cookie jar and finding a live octopus instead. "This is curious." Cree's voice carried a note of confusion that Jake found deeply satisfying. "The human's surface thoughts are chaotic. He appears to be thinking about sandwich construction techniques." That's right, Jake said cheerfully. I'm contemplating the structural integrity of a club sandwich. See, the thing about a club sandwich is that it's essentially architectural. You've got your foundation layer, your support structures, and then you've got to consider the weight distribution of the upper levels. It's basically civil engineering with lettuce. Kree's tentacles twitched. I am accessing deeper memories now. Surely the human strategic information lies beneath this surface noise. Commander Vex leaned forward, his exoskeleton creaking slightly. Proceed, Kree. Extract their military capabilities and technological specifications. Ah, Jake said, feeling Kree's mental probing grow stronger. You're going deeper? Well, hold on to your tentacles there, friend. It gets weirder the further down you go. Right now you're probably hitting my memories of that time I spent 2 hours watching videos of people opening packages. Human entertainment is, well, it's something. Indeed, Kree's bioluminescent patterns were now flashing in what appeared to be distress. Commander, this human's mind contains vast amounts of information about individuals opening containers and discussing the contents as if it were profoundly meaningful. Those are called unboxing videos, Jake explained helpfully. They're incredibly popular. Millions of humans watch other humans open things. Sometimes we watch people eat food while making exaggerated facial expressions. We call that mukbang. I know, it doesn't make sense to us either, but here we are. Vex's compound eyes were beginning to show what Jake interpreted as concern. Kree, bypass this irrelevant data. Find their weapon systems. I am trying, Commander, but there is so much noise. This human's mind appears to contain detailed knowledge of something called memes. These are images with text that humans share to communicate concepts. But the concepts themselves seem to be mostly about failing at basic tasks or expressing dissatisfaction with existence. Jake couldn't suppress a chuckle. Oh, you found my meme collection. That's just the tip of the iceberg, my tentacled friend. Wait until you hit my memories of social media arguments. I once spent 4 hours debating whether a hot dog was a sandwich with a person whose profile picture was a cartoon frog. Kree's voice was becoming increasingly strained. Commander, this human species appears to deliberately create mental content designed to waste time. They have entire networks dedicated to sharing brief videos of individuals performing mundane tasks or injuring themselves in amusing ways. That's TikTok, Jake said proudly. And YouTube. And Instagram. And Twitter. Well, it's called X now, but that's a whole other kind of mental breakdown you're not ready for. Trust me, Kree. You haven't even scratched the surface of human digital culture. We've essentially created machines that let us share our worst thoughts instantly with strangers across the globe. The lights on Kree's tentacles were now flashing in what appeared to be an SOS pattern. Commander, I request permission to abort this procedure. This human's mind contains far too much information about individuals they have never met, their personal relationships, and their opinions about these relationships. Denied, Vex snapped. Continue the extraction. Jake felt sorry for Kree. Almost. Oh, you're just getting to the good stuff now. Hope you're ready for my detailed knowledge of celebrity gossip, reality TV drama, and my extensive collection of cat videos. Fair warning, some of those cats are wearing tiny hats. Kree's mental probe pushed deeper into Jake's consciousness, and the alien's confidence began to crumble like a house of cards in a hurricane. The telepathic specialist's bioluminescent patterns were now strobing in what could only be described as panic disco mode. Commander, Kree's voice had developed a distinctly hysterical edge. This human's mind contains detailed information about something called influencer culture. Apparently, humans give other humans money to watch them live their lives and recommend products. That's the parasocial economy, Jake explained cheerfully, enjoying the mental equivalent of watching someone step on a rake. We've created an entire economic system based on pretending to be friends with people we've never met. Some humans make millions of dollars by filming themselves playing video games while other humans watch and donate money to them. Vex's exoskeleton was beginning to show stress fractures. Ignore this irrelevant data. Find their military intelligence. I am trying, Commander. But I have encountered something called shipping culture. Humans appear to create elaborate fictional romantic relationships between characters from their entertainment media and then argue passionately about these imaginary relationships with other humans who prefer different imaginary relationships. Jake nodded approvingly. Oh, you found my fan fiction phase? Yeah, I spent about 6 months writing stories about fictional characters falling in love. 40,000 words about 2 characters from a TV show who never actually met in the original series. The human imagination is a wonderful and terrible thing, Cree. The other aliens in the room were beginning to show signs of distress. Jake noticed that several crew members were clutching their heads and making sounds that he interpreted as the alien equivalent of "make it stop." This gets worse, Cree continued, his voice now carrying the tone of someone who had stared into the abyss and found it staring back with bloodshot eyes. This human has extensive knowledge of conspiracy theories. They know detailed information about beliefs that the Earth is flat, that birds are government surveillance devices, and that a secret cabal of lizard people control the world's governments. To be fair, Jake interjected, I don't believe those theories. I just know about them because humans love to share incorrect information with the same enthusiasm that other species share correct information. We've democratized stupidity, Cree. It's actually quite impressive from an anthropological standpoint. Commander Vex was now making a sound that Jake recognized as either laughter or the alien equivalent of a nervous breakdown. Cree, surely their military capabilities are stored deeper in their memory. I am accessing deeper levels, Commander, but I have encountered something called internet culture. This human's mind contains detailed knowledge of humans who have become famous for doing things like pretending to be surprised while opening containers, or recording themselves eating extremely spicy food, or filming themselves attempting to dance while lip-syncing to popular songs. Jake was beginning to feel genuinely sorry for Cree. Oh, you've reached the influencer layer. Yeah, we've got people who are famous for being famous. Some humans have millions of followers who watch them eat breakfast. We've essentially created a system where the most important skill is the ability to make mundane activities seem interesting. The mental connection was beginning to affect the other crew members. Jake noticed that several aliens were now exhibiting what appeared to be anxiety behaviors. One was compulsively checking what appeared to be a communication device, another was pacing back and forth, and a third was making repetitive clicking sounds. Enter. Cree's voice was now barely a whisper. I am detecting something called cringe culture. Humans appear to deliberately seek out content that makes them feel uncomfortable, and then they share this content with other humans for the express purpose of making them feel uncomfortable as well. That's second-hand embarrassment, Jake explained. We've weaponized awkwardness. Humans will watch other humans fail at basic social interactions and then discuss these failures with their friends. It's like a feedback loop of social anxiety. Vex was now making sounds that Jake was fairly certain were not part of any known alien language. Cree, I order you to find their strategic information immediately. I cannot. But, Commander, This human's mind contains too much information about humans judging other humans for their life choices while simultaneously making equally questionable life choices themselves. They have detailed knowledge of something called cancel culture, where humans collectively decide to stop supporting other humans based on their past statements or actions, but the criteria for this cancellation appears to be entirely arbitrary and constantly changing. Jake nodded. Social media has essentially turned human society into a giant high school where everyone is both the bully and the victim simultaneously. We've created a system where the most important skill is the ability to express outrage about the right things at the right time. The ship's lights began to flicker, which Jake interpreted as either a power problem or the alien equivalent of a stress headache. Kree's mental probe had now reached what Jake privately referred to as the dark archives of human consciousness, and the results were about as pleasant as performing surgery with a chainsaw. The alien's tentacles were vibrating at frequencies that suggested either deep meditation or complete system failure. "Commander." Kree's voice had developed the quality of someone who had just discovered that their entire worldview was constructed from lies and bubble wrap. "I have accessed this human's knowledge of human history. Commander. They have had over 200 wars in the past century alone. They have created weapons capable of destroying their entire planet multiple times over, and they have pointed these weapons at themselves." Jake felt a moment of genuine pride. "Oh, you've reached the war section? Yeah, we're really good at creative violence. Did you get to the part about how we invented chemical weapons and then felt so bad about it that we banned them? But we still keep them around just in case? Or how about nuclear weapons? We built those to end one war and then spent the next 50 years terrified they'd end all wars permanently." Vex's exoskeleton was now making sounds like a coffee machine having an existential crisis. "Kree, surely their primitive nature limits their destructive capabilities." "No, Commander." Kree's voice was now the mental equivalent of a scream. "They have turned destruction into entertainment. This human has detailed knowledge of films where their own species is systematically destroyed by aliens, monsters, natural disasters, and artificial intelligences. They watch these scenarios for enjoyment, Commander. They pay money to watch simulations of their own extinction." "Horror movies," Jake said helpfully. "We love being scared. The more creative the death, the better. We've got movies about killer sharks, killer clowns, killer dolls, killer plants, killer cars, and killer furniture. If it exists, we've probably made a movie about it trying to kill us." The mental connection was now affecting the entire ship. Jake could hear alarms blaring in the distance, and several crew members were exhibiting behavior that he recognized as the alien equivalent of panic attacks. One was curled up in what appeared to be a ventilation shaft, another was repeatedly banging its head against a wall, and a third was making high-pitched keening sounds. "But it gets worse," Commander Kree continued, his voice now carrying the tone of someone who had seen the face of madness and found it oddly familiar. "This human has knowledge of extreme sports. Their species deliberately engages in activities that are statistically likely to cause injury or death, and they do this for recreation. They jump off cliffs, they race vehicles at dangerous speeds, they climb mountains that regularly kill climbers. And they do all of this voluntarily." Jake grinned. "Oh, you found my extreme sports memories?" Yeah. We've got people who jump out of perfectly good airplanes for fun. We've got people who surf waves that are 40 feet tall. We've got people who free climb mountains without safety equipment. We've essentially turned natural selection into a spectator sport." Commander Vex was now making sounds that Jake was fairly certain were not covered in any first contact protocol. 3. Extract their technological capabilities immediately. "I cannot, Commander. This human's mind contains detailed information about something called Florida Man. This appears to be a category of human who engages in behavior so illogical and dangerous that other humans share stories about these individuals as a form of entertainment." "Florida Man is a special category of human," Jake explained. "They're like the rest of us, but with the safety settings turned off. Florida Man has fought alligators, stolen military vehicles, and attempted to pay for fast food with illegal drugs. They're basically what happens when you give a human access to swampland and remove all consequences for their actions." The ship's environmental systems were now making sounds that suggested either imminent system failure or the alien equivalent of hyperventilation. The lights were strobing in patterns that hurt to look at, and Jake was fairly certain that the artificial gravity was beginning to fluctuate. "Commander." "Wonder." Kree's voice was now barely audible. "I am detecting something called social media influence. This human has detailed knowledge of humans who modify their physical appearance to conform to artificial beauty standards, but then share images of these modifications with other humans, who then modify their own appearance to match, creating a feedback loop of physical modification based on digital manipulation. Instagram culture, Jake said. We've created a system where people alter their faces with software and then feel bad about their actual faces not matching the altered versions. It's like a hall of mirrors, but instead of just looking weird, it makes you question your entire sense of self-worth. Vex's compound eyes were now rapidly cycling through what appeared to be every color in the visible spectrum. Abort the procedure. This is too much. I cannot, Commander. The connection has become too strong. I am beginning to experience what this human calls existential dread. Commander, why do any of us do anything? What is the point of existence if we are all just going to die anyway? Jake felt a moment of genuine sympathy. Oh no, you've hit the philosophy section. Yeah, humans think about that stuff a lot. We've got entire schools of thought dedicated to the question of whether life has meaning. Spoiler alert, we still haven't figured it out, but we've written a lot of very depressing books about it. The telepathic connection had now reached what Jake privately referred to as the point of no return, and the alien ship was beginning to experience what could only be described as a collective nervous breakdown. Kree's tentacles were now flashing in patterns that suggested either advanced communication or the alien equivalent of a seizure. Commander. Malander. Kree's voice had developed the quality of someone who had just discovered that reality was optional and nobody had told them. But I am experiencing something this human calls decision paralysis. There are too many options for every choice, and each option leads to an infinite number of sub-options. How do humans choose what to eat for breakfast when there are thousands of possible combinations? Jake nodded sympathetically. Oh, you've hit the modern choice overload section. Yeah, we've got entire stores dedicated to breakfast cereal alone, aisle upon aisle of different ways to eat grain with milk. We've turned nutrition into a philosophy degree. The ship's computer systems were now making sounds that suggested either advanced calculations or the digital equivalent of sobbing. Throughout the vessel, Jake could hear the sounds of alien crew members exhibiting what appeared to be various forms of human-like anxiety disorders. It gets worse, Commander. Kree continued, his voice now carrying the tone of someone who had stared into the abyss and found it scrolling through social media. This human has detailed knowledge of something called imposter syndrome. Humans regularly feel like they are inadequate at tasks they are demonstrably skilled at performing. They have convinced themselves that their successes are accidental and that they will eventually be exposed as frauds. That's just Tuesday for most humans, Jake explained. We've created a society where everyone feels like they're faking their way through life. Doctors feel like fake doctors, teachers feel like fake teachers, and adults feel like fake adults. We're all just making it up as we go along and hoping nobody notices. Commander Vex was now exhibiting what Jake recognized as the alien equivalent of a panic attack. His exoskeleton was changing colors rapidly, and he was making sounds that suggested either advanced communication or the biological equivalent of a smoke alarm. Commander. Mimti. Kree's voice was now barely a whisper. I am experiencing what this human calls social anxiety. I am suddenly aware of how every other crew member is perceiving my performance, and I am convinced that they are all judging me negatively. Is my telepathic technique adequate? Are my tentacles arranged in a socially acceptable manner? Jake felt genuinely bad for the alien. Oh no, you've reached the social anxiety layer. Yeah, humans spend about 60% of their mental energy wondering what other humans think about them. We've got people who rehearse conversations in their heads for hours before having them, and then spend hours afterward analyzing what they should have said differently. The ship's environmental systems were now clearly failing. The lights were strobing in patterns that suggested either advanced alien technology or the equivalent of a disco ball having a seizure. Jake could hear alarms blaring throughout the vessel, and several crew members were now exhibiting behavior that he recognized as the alien equivalent of hiding under a blanket. But the worst part, Commander, Cree continued, his voice now carrying the tone of someone who had discovered that the universe was simultaneously meaningful and meaningless, is something this human calls FOMO, fear of missing out. Humans are constantly aware that other humans are doing things that they are not doing, and this awareness causes them distress. They have created systems to constantly inform them of all the activities they are not participating in. Social media, Jake said. We've created a system where everyone shares the highlight reel of their lives, and then everyone else compares their behind-the-scenes footage to other people's highlight reels. It's like a competition where everyone is both winning and losing simultaneously. Commander Vex was now making sounds that Jake was fairly certain were not covered in any known alien language manual. 3. End the connection immediately. This is an order. I cannot. Well, Commander. The connection has become too strong. I am now experiencing what this human calls analysis paralysis. I am aware of so many potential outcomes for every decision that I cannot make any decisions at all. Should I end the connection? But what if ending the connection is the wrong choice? What if not ending the connection is the wrong choice? What if there is no right choice? Jake realized that he had accidentally weaponized human consciousness against an alien telepathic system. Oh, Cree, you've reached the overthinking section. Yeah, humans can think themselves out of any action. We've got people who spend so much time analyzing their options that they never actually choose any of them. The ship was now exhibiting what appeared to be the technological equivalent of a complete system crash. Lights were flickering randomly, gravity was fluctuating in ways that made Jake's stomach feel like it was on a roller coaster. And the air recycling system was making sounds that suggested it was considering early retirement. Commander. Cree's voice was now the mental equivalent of a scream. I am experiencing something called existential crisis. If humans are aware that their existence is temporary and ultimately meaningless, why do they continue to exist? But if existence is meaningful, why do they spend so much time engaged in activities that provide no apparent benefit? Jake felt a moment of genuine philosophical pride. Welcome to the human condition, Cree. We've been trying to figure that out for thousands of years. The best answer we've come up with is, why not? The moment Jake had been waiting for finally arrived when Commander Vex, his voice now carrying the defeated tone of someone who had just discovered that their entire military doctrine was based on a fundamental misunderstanding of enemy capabilities, spoke the words that would echo through human military history. Please, Vex said, his exoskeleton now cycling through colors that Jake interpreted as the alien equivalent of waving a white flag, make it stop. Jake looked around the ship, which was now exhibiting what could only be described as the technological equivalent of a complete nervous breakdown. Sparks were flying from control panels, the artificial gravity was fluctuating like a broken elevator, and the air recycling system was making sounds that suggested it was contemplating career changes. Oh, now you want me to stop? Jake said, his voice carrying the satisfied tone of someone who had just won an argument they never expected to win. But we were just getting to the good stuff. I haven't even told you about road rage yet, or how humans react when their internet connection is slow, or the psychological effects of trying to assemble furniture with deliberately confusing instructions. Kree's tentacles were now flashing in what appeared to be the alien equivalent of Morse code for help me. Human, I beg you, your mental patterns are spreading through the ship's telepathic network. The crew is beginning to experience what you call Monday morning feelings, and several have reported symptoms of what appears to be shopping addiction. Jake nodded approvingly. Oh, the telepathic network is sharing my consciousness? That's fascinating. So now your entire crew is experiencing human-level anxiety about everything from their appearance to their job performance to whether they've made the right life choices. How's that working out for you? Throughout the ship, Jake could hear the sounds of alien crew members exhibiting various forms of human-like psychological distress. Someone was apparently having what sounded like a panic attack about whether they had remembered to turn off their equivalent of a coffee maker. Another was making sounds that suggested they were questioning their career choices. A third was exhibiting what appeared to be the alien equivalent of retail therapy, frantically operating what looked like a vending machine. Commander Kree's voice was now barely audible. I am experiencing something called decision fatigue. I cannot choose between ending the telepathic connection or continuing to gather intelligence. Both options seem simultaneously necessary and impossible. Jake felt a moment of genuine sympathy for the aliens, but it was overwhelmed by his appreciation for the situation's cosmic irony. You know what, Kree? This is actually a perfect example of why humans are so successful as a species. We've learned to function despite constant mental chaos. We've adapted to live with anxiety, uncertainty, and the constant awareness that we're probably making the wrong choices about everything. Commander Vex was now making sounds that Jake recognized as the alien equivalent of someone trying to find their car keys while having an existential crisis. Human, we will release you immediately. We will provide you with transportation back to your vessel. We will give you supplies, weapons, anything you require. Just please disconnect from our telepathic network. Well, since you asked so nicely, Jake said, settling back in his chair with the satisfaction of someone who had just discovered that their greatest weakness was actually their greatest strength. I suppose I could stop thinking about human psychology and start thinking about something more pleasant. Like how we've created entire industries dedicated to making people feel bad about their bodies, or how we've turned news into entertainment, or how we've convinced ourselves that we need to be constantly productive while simultaneously creating systems designed to waste our time. The ship's computer systems were now making sounds that suggested either advanced artificial intelligence or PERT, the digital equivalent of someone having a panic attack while trying to remember if they had locked their front door. Please. Maze. Vex's voice was now the defeated whisper of someone who had just realized that their advanced alien civilization was no match for human psychological dysfunction. We surrender. We will leave your space immediately. We will file a report with the Galactic Council recommending that your species be classified as a Class 12 mental hazard. No telepathic species should ever attempt to read human minds. Jake grinned as he felt the restraints on his chair automatically releasing. You know, Vex, this has been genuinely educational. I've learned that human consciousness is apparently so chaotic that it functions as a form of psychological warfare. Earth's military is going to love this. As Jake stood up and stretched, he looked around at the alien crew, who were now exhibiting what appeared to be the full spectrum of human anxiety disorders. I'll tell you what, folks, I'll head back to my ship now, and in a few hours the effects of exposure to human consciousness should wear off. Probably. Maybe. Actually, I'm not sure they ever really go away completely. Humans just learn to live with them. Commander Vex's final words as Jake headed toward the exit were spoken with the tone of someone who had just discovered that the universe was far stranger and more terrifying than they had ever imagined. How do your species function with minds like that? Jake paused at the doorway and looked back with a grin that contained all the sardonic wisdom of a species that had learned to thrive in psychological chaos. Very carefully, Commander. Very carefully. 6 months later, Jake's report to Earth Command would become required reading at every military academy in human space. The document, officially titled Psychological Warfare Applications of Human Consciousness, a case study in telepathic vulnerability, would forever change humanity's approach to alien contact. The Zephyrian Empire, meanwhile, would add humans to their list of species too dangerous to contact, but filed somewhere between sentient black holes and civilizations that have weaponized entropy. The official report would note that human minds contained hazardous levels of existential uncertainty and that telepathic contact should be avoided at all costs. Jake Morrison would go down in history as the man who discovered that humanity's greatest weakness was actually its greatest strength, and that sometimes the best defense against superior alien technology was simply being human enough to drive them absolutely insane.